So let me tell you one more story. I think some of you know who Larry and Addie Garman are. Larry and Addie Garman are Nazarene missionaries, or at least they were for many, many years, 40 years in the Amazon jungle. And they lived in a very primitive part of the jungle in the Amazon River Basin where just solitary and living there among the Auca Indians. And early on, and we know the Garmans well, not only because they're Nazarene missionaries, but because their niece, Alicia, married my son, Ben. So we not only know them as friends, we know them as family. And early on in their time in the Amazon, Addie was bitten by a deadly snake. And it was the kind of a snake that was so dangerous and so poisonous, nobody had ever really known anybody to survive a snake bite from that snake. And so they started trying to work on her and do whatever they could, and the Indians were coming alongside trying to help, but Addie immediately went unconscious, and she started running this raging fever, and they thought they were about to lose her. And Larry said, all we can do now is pray. Simultaneously, at that very same moment, there was a Nazarene man somewhere in the Midwest. For all I know, he could have been in Arkansas. I don't know who it was or where he was, but I know the story because I've heard it from the Garmans. It was a Thanksgiving day, and he was about to sit down to Thanksgiving dinner with his family when all of a sudden he felt the nudge. And when you walk with the Lord enough, you know what the nudge feels like. You know what the prompting feels like. You know, there's impressions. Now, I don't know that I've had the Lord audibly speak to me, at least that I could remember, but I know the nudge, I know the prompt, I know the voice, and you do too. And that voice said to him that day, I want you to go pray right now. And it was such a strong impression in his mind, it was confusing because he said, well, Lord, I'm about to go and eat, could this wait until after my turkey? And the Lord just seemed to press the urgency. And so he said to his wife, honey, I don't understand what's going on, but I deeply feel impressed by the Lord to go and pray right now. And she said, well, he's the Lord. You better obey him. And so he goes into the other room. His family sits down at the table, and he gets down on his knees beside his bed, and he starts praying and just saying, okay, Lord, here I am. What do you want me to pray for? And he felt this impression to pray for South America. Well, okay, so he starts praying for a few minutes, just generically for South America. And then he says, Lord, this doesn't feel like the reason you got me up from dinner. Is there something more? And he felt the Lord impress, I want you to pray for some missionaries. And so he starts praying for all the missionaries he could think of. And then after about a minute of that, he just felt so frustrated because he said, Lord, I know you didn't ask me to leave the table and to come and pray just for a group of missionaries. Please, Lord, I'm listening. Why am I here? And he said, in that moment, it was like Addie Garman's name just gets dropped into his mind, which was very, very strange because he didn't personally know Addie Garman. He only knew of her. And, you know, it's like reading Come Ye Apart. You remember Come Ye Apart and all that used to show all the missionary names. He knew where she was. He knew who she was, but he'd never personally met her. But as soon as the name Addie Garman came into his mind, he immediately knew this is why he was called to pray. And he could feel his heart start pounding. And so he just began to plead on Addie's behalf. Lord, I don't know where Addie is right now, but you know what she needs. Protect her, watch over her, provide for whatever needs she's facing right now. And he just passionately and earnestly interceded for her for 5 or 10 minutes. And just as suddenly as the burden had come, he felt the burden lift. And he just sensed this release that, well done, you can go back and be with your family, which is what he did. 3 years go by. And this man goes and attends a general assembly for the Church of the Nazarene. That's every 4-year gathering of people from around the world who are Nazarenes. And he's there with thousands and thousands of people. When across a crowded room, he sees who he thinks is Addie Garman. And so he goes over and he introduces himself to her. He says, "Excuse me, are you Addie?" "Yes, I am." "Well, you don't know me and I don't know you, but I just have an unusual question for you. Were you ever in great need about 3 years ago? In fact, I can tell you the very day it was. It was on Thanksgiving Day. Did you have something happen?" And she said, "Oh, yes." And she began to tell him about that snake bite and how she had gone unconscious and her fever was, they thought they were about to lose her. And she said, "But something happened in the middle of the night. And they tell me that just almost in an instant, my fever broke. And then in an hour or so, I kind of regained my consciousness. And in a few hours later, I was sitting up in bed. And then 2 or 3 days later, I was walking around almost as if nothing had even happened. And everybody said it's a miracle that she didn't die from that snake bite. But she said, now I know that you were praying for me." Now let's do a little theology 101. David, are you trying to say that if that man had not prayed for Addie when the Lord told him to pray, that he would have let Addie die? That's not what I'm saying. God is way bigger than our obedience. God is not limited by our obedience or disobedience. God can do anything God wants to do. Does God choose to use us in obedience? Yes. But no, I don't think God would have let Addie die if he hadn't prayed. But that's not even really the point of the story. Here's the point. I don't know who that man is. That man may be sitting right here tonight. But I know something really important about this man. He was an obedient, fully surrendered follower of Jesus. You want to know why I know that? Because even when he didn't understand, and even when it made no sense to him at the time, he said, "Because you say so, I will."